The air within the Vatican's secret archives is thick with the dust of centuries, a perpetual twilight where forgotten truths are said to slumber. Beneath layers of ecclesiastical bureaucracy and solemn pronouncements, a different history is whispered, one that predates not just Christ, but Adam himself. This isn't just about heresy. It's about an epoch erased, a world submerged beneath the waves of collective memory and, some say, deliberate suppression. The story begins not with creation as we know it, but with what came before. Imagine, for a moment, a library vast beyond comprehension, its shelves groaning under the weight of illuminated manuscripts, ancient scrolls, and forgotten codices. But amongst these, hidden in lead-lined chests or behind false panels, lie the truly subversive texts. These are the forbidden books, not merely those that challenge dogma, but those that describe a civilization that thrived before the Great Flood, a time when beings of immense stature walked the earth, and technologies far beyond our understanding shaped a world now lost. The cornerstone of this suppressed narrative is the alleged existence of detailed historical accounts concerning the pre-Adamite world. Mainstream religious doctrine holds that human history begins with Adam and Eve in Eden, followed by the subsequent fall and the events leading up to Noah's Ark. However, within the deepest vaults, theorists claim, the archives house texts and maps that describe a fully functioning, advanced civilization that existed long before the biblical chronology begins. These documents allegedly challenge the fundamental timeline of human habitation, pushing back the starting point of advanced culture by tens of thousands of years. The very existence of such records implies that the conventional religious and historical timelines are at best incomplete and at worst intentionally misleading. Central to this pre-Adamite society are the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in Genesis 6, traditionally understood as the hybrid offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. But the Vatican's rumoured documents go far beyond simple myth. They are said to contain explicit, detailed records of their physical characteristics, their societal structure, and most critically, their technological capabilities. These weren't merely large humans. They are depicted as engineers and architects of impossible scale. The script fragments supposedly describe cities built with colossal monolithic stones, structures that demonstrate an advanced mastery of geometry, resonance, and energy manipulation, far surpassing what the historical record acknowledges for that time period. The implications are enormous. The flood, in this context, was not just a natural disaster or divine punishment, but an event that deliberately wiped out a technologically sophisticated, non-human civilization whose existence would entirely undermine the foundations of modern theological authority. The effort to suppress this knowledge, therefore, is not about faith, but about preserving the established power structure built on a specific, controlled historical narrative. One such legendary text, often hinted at in obscure Gnostic writings and apocryphal tales, is said to be the Book of the Watchers, an expanded version of what we know from the Book of Enoch. But this alleged Vatican edition is said to contain far more explicit details, not just the fall of angelic beings, but their direct interaction with early human progenitors, leading to hybrid offspring known as the Nephilim. More importantly, these texts allegedly detail the extent of Nephilim civilization, their architectural marvels built with unheard-of strength and engineering, their knowledge of celestial mechanics, and even their methods of energy manipulation. These aren't just myths within the Vatican. They are treated as classified historical records, too volatile to be exposed to a world founded on a meticulously crafted timeline. The implications are staggering. If humanity is not the first intelligent civilization, if our origins are far more complex and interdimensional than believed, then the entire theological framework of salvation and original sin shatters. The texts reportedly focus heavily on the forbidden technologies employed by the Watchers and the Nephilim. These were not primitive tools, but sophisticated systems suggesting an understanding of physics that we are only now beginning to grasp. Imagine blueprints for devices capable of manipulating gravitational forces, allowing the effortless movement of stones weighing hundreds of tons, the very puzzle that modern archaeologists face when looking at sites like Baalbek or the foundations of Peruvian megaliths. The Vatican's archives are rumoured to hold the technical specifications for these pre-Adamite machines, detailing their power sources and operating principles. This knowledge, if authentic, would represent a historical technological singularity, a leap in engineering that was intentionally removed from the evolutionary path of modern humanity. Furthermore, the suppression is fueled by the understanding of the danger inherent in these technologies. The accounts within the forbidden books are said to describe how the Watchers used their advanced knowledge not just to build, but to wage devastating conflicts, perhaps even triggering the very climatic shifts that led to the Great Flood. If the knowledge of anti-gravity, sonic construction, or advanced atmospheric control were to fall into the wrong hands today, the potential for global catastrophe would be immense. The Church, in this theory, assumes the role of a reluctant gatekeeper, burdened by the terrible secret that humanity, left to its own devices with such power, will inevitably self-destruct. They are not hiding a simple secret. They are allegedly suppressing a doomsday playbook inherited from a failed precursor race. This knowledge also directly impacts the concept of divine omniscience and human freedom. If the Nephilim were the product of a direct intervention by non-human intelligences, their technology and knowledge are essentially alien. This complicates the narrative of a singular linear creation and redemption arc taught for centuries. The suppression of the Nephilim's technological legacy is thus necessary to maintain the perception of human spiritual exceptionalism and to ensure the supremacy of a singular, established cosmology. The forbidden books are windows into a chaotic, pluralistic cosmic history that the established order cannot afford to acknowledge. The Church, in this narrative, is not merely a keeper of faith, but a custodian of a carefully curated reality. The suppression isn't malicious in the conventional sense, but a perceived necessity to maintain order, to prevent global chaos that would ensue if the true tapestry of prehistory were unravelled. Consider the weight of evidence. Not just ancient texts, but artifacts. Stone tablets inscribed with languages unknown, metallurgical samples showing impossible alloys, and even fragmented skeletal remains of giants, too anomalous for public display. These are not in dusty museum basements. They are allegedly deep within the Vatican's secure vaults, alongside the very documents that explain their origins. The fear is not just of scientific paradigm shifts, but of a spiritual crisis of unparalleled magnitude. If Nephilim technology once existed, what does that say about divine intervention, or the very nature of human spiritual exceptionalism? The alleged archival cataloguing system for these suppressed items is reportedly complex and heavily compartmentalized, employing obscure medieval cipher systems and non-sequential numbering to ensure that no single person or even small group can piece together the entire scope of the Nephilim and Pre-Adamite evidence. The artifacts themselves are described as tangible proof of the forbidden history. The impossible alloys are said to be metallic compounds with unusual isotopic ratios, showing a level of refinement and stability unattainable through ancient or even early modern smelting techniques. These fragments, often recovered from deep geological layers or from under ancient temples, serve as hard scientific evidence that a technologically capable civilization existed before the historical reset of the flood. Furthermore, the skeletal remains are perhaps the most sensitive material. Rumors persist of bones exhibiting anatomical structures incompatible with Homo sapiens, displaying colossal stature. Some accounts describe individuals estimated to be between 12 and 18 feet tall. The archives are said to contain detailed anatomical drawings, the forensic reports, and photographic plates of these remains, complete with documentation detailing the locations and circumstances of their discovery. The very existence of giant, non-human hominids poses an immediate and devastating challenge to evolutionary biology and the theological concept of man being created in God's image. The suppression is aimed at neutralizing this existential threat to both scientific and religious narratives simultaneously. The language barrier is another layer of suppression. The stone tablets and texts found alongside these artifacts are often inscribed in what is referred to as pre-deluge script, a language that bears no relation to known linguistic families like Semitic or Indo-European. The Vatican, possessing these Rosetta Stones of the pre-Adamite world, is allegedly the only institution with the capability to translate these narratives fully. This gives the Church immense, singular control over the narrative of human origins. The ability to read the actual history written by the Nephilim or their contemporaries is a power that, if unleashed, would immediately invalidate vast tracts of established history and doctrine, hence the zealous protection of these linguistic keys. The entire operation functions as a systematic effort to manage the perception of reality itself. The most compelling evidence for this alleged suppression lies in the persistent whispers about anomalies found during construction projects around the world, particularly in regions known for ancient megalithic structures. Imagine reports filtering into the Vatican from its global network, detailing impossible precision in stone cutting or magnetic anomalies beneath sites traditionally associated with giants. These reports, it is claimed, are meticulously cross-referenced with the forbidden maps that depict continents in configurations unfamiliar, landmasses now submerged, and markings indicating sites of advanced structures long since fallen into ruin or buried under millennia of sediment. These maps, unlike anything in public cartography, are said to show the true geography of the pre-Adamite world, a cartographic record of a lost age. These aren't treasure maps in the conventional sense. They are blueprints of a forgotten world order, a testament to what once was. The Church's interest is not in exploiting these ancient sites, but in ensuring their secrets remain buried. Archaeological digs, seemingly innocuous and publicly funded, are allegedly monitored for any signs of breaching the sensitive layers of history. Any discovery that hints at pre-Adamite or Nephilim presence is either quietly absorbed, recontextualized, or in extreme cases, allegedly covered up. The narratives surrounding lost cities and mythical giants are allowed to persist as harmless folklore, preventing closer scrutiny of the scientific or historical implications. The silence is deafening, speaking volumes of what must be protected at all costs. The nature of these forbidden maps is highly technical. They are not simply geographical representations, but complex tectonic and energy grid schematics. Some of the maps allegedly show the true positions of the continents before the catastrophic shifting caused by the flood, detailing enormous landmasses that correspond to the myths of Atlantis, Lemuria, and other sunken civilizations, placing them directly within the pre-Adamite timeline. Crucially, these maps are crisscrossed with lines, much like a modern power grid, indicating points of significant telluric energy or former power generation sites used by the Nephilim technology. The Vatican's possession of these maps gives them the unique ability to predict where the next major artifacts or structures might be uncovered, allowing them to preemptively manage the flow of information. The suppression strategy involves the strategic seeding of misinformation into the historical record. For example, the Church's involvement in classifying and legitimizing specific biblical and historical texts is seen by theorists as a calculated move to prioritize narratives that exclude the pre-Adamite civilization. By elevating certain texts and condemning others as apocryphal or heretical, they effectively build a firewall against the forbidden history. The suppression isn't passive. It's an active, generational project to maintain the integrity of the established timeline, ensuring that the remnants of the giant's technological age remain firmly in the realm of myth and unproven conjecture, far from the scrutiny of serious academic research. The maps are the silent witnesses to this colossal deception. The concept of Nephilim structures itself is a radical departure from conventional archaeology. We are not talking about simple monumental architecture. The legends describe structures built with an understanding of physics and energy that borders on the fantastical, levitation of massive stones, sonic manipulation for cutting, even atmospheric control for construction. These are not primitive peoples piling rocks. These are the remnants of a highly advanced, albeit alien-influenced civilization. The Vatican archives, it is claimed, contain blueprints, schematics, and detailed descriptions of these forgotten technologies, knowledge that would revolutionize our modern world if unleashed. The fear isn't just disruption, it's the potential for misuse, for humanity to stumble upon forces it cannot comprehend or control, repeating a cycle of destruction that led to the deluge in the first place. The alleged Nephilim architectural principles detailed in the suppressed texts suggest a non-reliance on conventional mechanical force. Instead, The descriptions point to the use of vibrational energy and sound wave manipulation for material processing. Imagine a construction technique where colossal blocks of granite or basalt are softened or levitated purely through targeted frequencies, allowing for the impossible fit of stones seen at sites like Sacsayhuaman or the Cyclopean walls of Sardinia. The archives, according to this theory, contain the actual frequency charts and device specifications used to generate this power, turning ancient mysteries into solvable engineering problems. The technological suppression extends into the realm of biological engineering. The Nephilim were hybrids, and the archives allegedly contain forbidden books that detail the process of their creation, including early genetic modification techniques and the manipulation of life forms. These documents are viewed as particularly dangerous, as they threaten to expose the true, less-than-spiritual origin of this precursor race, and potentially provide a roadmap for modern scientists to replicate or weaponize similar bioengineering feats. The Church's deep involvement in maintaining ethical boundaries in genetic science is, in this light, interpreted as a direct result of historical knowledge gained from the catastrophic experiments of the Nephilim age. The reason for this extreme vigilance against Nephilim structures entering the public sphere is practical and immediate. Proof of concept. If a modern construction crew were to discover a functioning piece of Nephilim technology, even a small component that defies current physics, it would immediately validate the entire narrative of a technologically advanced pre-Adamite world. This would open the floodgates for mass academic and public inquiry into every megalithic site, putting immense pressure on institutions to explain the unexplained. The Vatican's strategy is allegedly to monitor and preemptively neutralize any such discovery, ensuring that all artifacts that hint at impossible physics remain exclusively in their secret custody, preserved but hidden from the world. The deeper one delves into these alleged archives, the more profound the philosophical questions become. If the Nephilim, these hybrid beings, possessed advanced technology, what was their ultimate fate? Were they wiped out by the flood, or did remnants survive, their knowledge passed down in secret lineages, occasionally resurfacing in myth and whispered histories? And what role did the divine play in their demise? Was the flood a punitive act against a corrupted world, or a deliberate cleansing to reset human evolution, wiping the slate clean of unwanted influences and technologies? The Vatican's alleged knowledge of these events would paint a very different picture of God, creation, and humanity's place in the cosmos. It would transform biblical narratives from allegories into heavily redacted historical accounts. The documents reportedly stored within the vaults contain explicit details regarding the mechanism of the Great Flood. It is not presented merely as 40 days and nights of rain, but as a catastrophic global event, possibly triggered or exacerbated by the Nephilim themselves through misuse of their environmental control technologies. Some rumored texts suggest the flood was a necessary, violent intervention to prevent the complete genetic corruption of the pre-human genome, effectively a hard reset to safeguard the future lineage of Homo sapiens from the Watcher's influence. This reframes the entire narrative of original sin, linking it less to an apple and more to a technological and genetic contamination that had to be surgically removed from the planet's surface. The archives allegedly hold records detailing the post-flood survival strategies of the Watchers and their remnants. While the majority of the Nephilim and their infrastructure were annihilated, some records hint at specific deep underground bunkers or sophisticated submersible craft that allowed key figures and a repository of their knowledge to survive. These surviving factions are rumored to have gone into hiding, establishing secret societies and cults throughout history, periodically attempting to reintroduce the forbidden knowledge or subtly influence human technological progress. This suggests the Church is not merely suppressing history, but actively monitoring and countering a continuous, millennia-long operation by the surviving pre-Adamite elements. The ultimate fear driving the suppression is the threat of spiritual deconstruction. The alleged Vatican texts describe the Nephilim not just as large people, but as beings capable of perceiving and interacting with multiple dimensions, blurring the lines between the physical and the spiritual. Their technology was an extension of this multidimensional understanding. If this truth were revealed, it would immediately demystify many traditional religious concepts, explaining miracles and angelic visitations through the lens of advanced, forgotten physics. This revelation would render established faith frameworks obsolete, triggering a global crisis where billions of people would simultaneously question the core tenets of their spiritual beliefs, an event the Vatican allegedly fears more than any military conflict. The maintenance of the current spiritual order is the prime directive behind the walls of the secret archives. The suppression, therefore, is not a simple act of hiding. It is an act of curation, of shaping human consciousness to fit a specific narrative. The Church, in this theory, has taken on the mantle of protecting humanity from truths it deems too dangerous, too disorienting. The information about the pre-Adamite world, the Nephilim and their technologies is not just an alternative history. It is a fundamental challenge to the very foundation of modern civilization, science and faith. The revelation of such information would not just cause a stir, it would trigger an existential crisis of unprecedented scale, forcing humanity to confront its true origins and its place in a universe far more complex than currently understood. This project of consciousness shaping allegedly relies heavily on controlling educational and philosophical thought leaders throughout history. Documents are rumored to detail systematic methods used to discredit, isolate, or integrate scholars whose findings stray too close to the pre-Adamite narrative. For example, discoveries of anomalous structures or artifacts that hint at advanced ancient technology are often swiftly labeled as hoaxes, misidentified geological formations, or the products of mass hysteria. This consistent multi-century effort has successfully conditioned the modern academic world to automatically reject evidence that falls outside the established chronological and evolutionary paradigm, making the Church's job of physical suppression much easier. One of the most potent weapons in this arsenal is the collection of heretical manuscripts deemed too accurate for public consumption. While the Vatican acknowledges possessing many apocryphal texts, the secret archives allegedly hold hundreds of completely unknown scrolls, written in the immediate aftermath of the flood, that provide first-hand accounts of the devastation and the reasons behind the Nephilim's downfall. These texts often describe the giants' technologies not as gifts, but as cursed tools that led to moral and environmental corruption. By keeping these cautionary tales hidden, the Church ensures that the focus remains on simple faith rather than the complex, technologically driven consequences of mixing human and non-human intelligence. The moral rationale for the continued suppression is said to be based on an internal debate spanning centuries. Is humanity mature enough to handle its true origins? The predominant view, according to the theory, is no. The fear is that knowledge of advanced pre-Adamite technology would not lead to enlightenment, but to a global technological arms race far more destructive than any seen in modern history. The documents are allegedly kept under lock and key, not out of malice, but out of a desperate, perceived need to prevent the recurrence of the deluge, using the Nephilim's catastrophic end as the ultimate justification for perpetual secrecy. The vaults are not tombs of knowledge, but a global emergency brake designed to keep humanity safely ignorant of its own fatal potential. Imagine the sheer scale of the operation, a millennia-long effort to catalogue, classify and conceal every obscure text, every artifact that surfaces, every archaeological discovery that doesn't fit the established narrative, all allegedly processed through this secret filter. The archives are not just a repository of old books, they are an intelligence agency for forgotten history. And at the heart of it all is the question: what if the forbidden knowledge isn't just about the past, but about the future? What if the Nephilim technologies detailed in these suppressed documents hold keys to our own technological evolution, or even our survival? And what if the Church, by keeping these secrets, is holding back not just a historical truth, but a potential future for humanity? The operational arm of this concealment is rumoured to be a deeply embedded, specialised agency within the Curia, sometimes referred to in whispers as the Custodes Temporis, the guardians of time. This group, comprised of theologians, historians, linguists, and even covert operatives, is allegedly responsible for monitoring global media, scientific journals, and archaeological findings for any sign of a breach in the pre-Adamite secrecy. Their methods are said to range from simple academic debunking to the discreet acquisition and removal of sensitive artifacts before they can be officially catalogued by secular institutions. The future implications of the suppressed knowledge are perhaps the most compelling reason for the Vatican's enduring vigilance. The blueprints and schematics of Nephilim technology, while potentially catastrophic, also represent an extraordinary leap in sustainable energy and material science. It is rumored that certain select, highly classified sections of the archives contain information on free energy sources or methods of material transmutation that could solve global resource scarcity overnight. The decision to suppress this is intensely complicated. It trades immediate human prosperity for long-term spiritual and social stability, based on the belief that humanity, given unlimited power, would merely accelerate its path to ruin, mirroring the Nephilim's own fate. The concept of the pre-Adamite knowledge filter suggests that certain essential truths about cosmology were deliberately excised from mainstream religious and philosophical thought. For example, the suppressed texts allegedly contain detailed knowledge of the multiverse or alternative dimensions, concepts now only explored theoretically by modern physics. If the Nephilim had the capacity to travel between dimensions or manipulate interdimensional forces, this knowledge would fundamentally alter our understanding of reality, making the established framework of linear time and space appear rudimentary. The Church is seen, in this light, as deliberately maintaining a simpler, less complex view of the universe to prevent mass psychological destabilization. The continued suppression, therefore, is a choice between potential scientific utopia and guaranteed social cohesion. The echoes of the pre-Adamite world are everywhere, if one knows where to look, in the impossible myths of giants, in the unexplained precision of ancient megaliths, in the recurring motifs of a golden age lost. The Vatican vaults, in this speculative journey, are not just dusty chambers of forgotten prayers, but the final resting place of a truth so profound, so paradigm-shattering, that its revelation would redefine everything we believe about ourselves, our past, and our future. The silence in this context is not emptiness, but a carefully constructed barrier, designed to protect us, or perhaps to control us, keeping the true story of humanity's ancient, alien-influenced technological past locked away, forever echoing in the forbidden halls of history. This theory suggests that the architectural layout of the Vatican itself, particularly the archives and their adjacent structures, may be subtly designed to function as a metaphysical containment field. Drawing upon the Nephilim's documented knowledge of sacred geometry and energy manipulation, the structures are purportedly aligned with specific geomagnetic lines, utilizing hidden copper plates and specially blessed materials to neutralize or dampen the potentially destabilizing energetic signatures emanating from the contained artifacts and texts. This elaborate setup hints that the materials stored within are not merely old documents, but actively resonant objects that must be perpetually managed to prevent unwanted metaphysical or physical effects. Furthermore, the linguistic keys to the pre-deluge script are reportedly guarded with extreme prejudice. It is not enough to possess the texts. One must understand the method of decoding the ancient, multi-layered ciphers that are said to interlace the narratives. The ability to read this language is not passed down through conventional linguistic training, but through a highly secretive, lifelong scholarly induction within the highest echelons of the Curia. This ensures that the few who can truly comprehend the depth of the pre-Adamite world are those whose loyalty and commitment to the suppression are absolute, effectively creating an epistemological shield around the truth. The ultimate paradox of the Vatican's concealment is the moral burden it places upon its custodians. The script fragments allegedly portray the Nephilim not as one-dimensional villains, but as deeply flawed, highly intelligent beings whose technological achievements were ultimately overshadowed by their hubris and poor moral judgment. The custodians of the archives are therefore caught in a perpetual ethical dilemma. They hold the key to potential global salvation through technological advancement, Yet they also hold the undeniable proof that this power inevitably leads to self-destruction. This constant struggle between preservation and revelation is what drives the perpetual deep-seated secrecy, ensuring that the pre-Adamite past remains a controlled echo rather than a defining reality. The vaults are not just a historical repository, they are a monument to the enduring risk of forbidden knowledge. The ultimate reality suggested by the existence of these forbidden archives is that humanity may not be living in a state of continuous progress, but rather a state of carefully enforced amnesia. The pre-Adamite world, with its advanced science and colossal Nephilim structures, represents a forgotten peak that we have yet to truly regain. Every modern technological breakthrough, from nuclear energy to genetic editing, is viewed by the custodians of the archives not as original human genius, but as humanity blindly rediscovering fragments of the power that was once deemed too dangerous and subsequently purged from the planet. The historical record, therefore, is not a testament to achievement, but a heavily edited document designed to flatter the current age. The final and most haunting aspect of the Vatican's secret knowledge is its alleged prediction of the Nephilim's eventual return. Some of the most sensitive prophecies within the vaults are said to describe a cyclical nature to history, where certain astronomical or geological alignments trigger a reawakening of the dormant Nephilim technologies or the resurgence of their surviving lineages. The Church's suppression is not merely about managing the past. It is about preparing for a catastrophic future confrontation where the secrets of the pre-Adamite world will become critical tactical intelligence. This internal belief transforms the Vatican from a religious institution into a long-range strategic command center, preparing humanity for a battle against forces it doesn't even know exist. The ancient maps mentioned earlier take on a renewed importance in this context. They are not just historical curiosities, but potential guides to finding and neutralizing these latent pre-Adamite sites before they can be activated. The Church's global influence and intelligence-gathering capabilities are allegedly marshaled not for theological expansion, but for the quiet, continuous monitoring of specific regions identified on the ancient maps as awakening zones, areas where telluric energy is increasing, or where ancient, buried structures are beginning to destabilize due to modern seismic activity or climate change. In conclusion, the story of the Vatican vaults and the suppressed pre-Adamite world is a narrative of profound consequence management. It posits a secret history far richer and more dangerous than public knowledge allows, one ruled by colossal beings, impossible technologies, and deliberate millennia-long acts of concealment. The archives are not merely hiding evidence, they are holding back the entire weight of human origins, creating a reality where faith and linear progress can thrive only through the conscious excision of a technologically advanced, alien-influenced past. The silence is the sound of history being constantly overwritten, ensuring that the forbidden blueprints of the Nephilim age remain locked away, perhaps forever, in the deepest shadows of Rome.